What is up? And how's it going? Just scrolling through X the other day and ran into an interesting dude with an interesting question. What is the self? Is it real or an illusion? We went back and forth a bit, but as it's not a great place for a decent conversation, I invited him on for a chat. So, from the very depths of X to the very depths of YouTube, a huge welcome to Diego. Hey Diego, thanks a bunch for agreeing to a chat. Would you mind quickly introducing yourself?
Hi, it's a pleasure to be here with you today, Afi. Having discussions on a Saturday afternoon or night, for that matter, are my definition of having a good time. I'm an English teacher by trade and an artist by passion. And I wish I could say I was like Batman, having a double life, but truth is much more chaotic than fiction, and they are intertwined. I am in love with discourse and logic and the effects of bad reasoning. And so I'm an aficionado, and I look for logical fallacies everywhere. And that was one of the reasons why I was thinking of self one of these days on X.
Nice. Well, thanks for that. And where can people find you? Or are you more of a leave me the hell alone sort of guy?
I am in between, I guess. I am a little bit of a low profile these days, but I also am present on most social media, and on Twitter you can find me with a handle that is Vegas Don Diego. It is a joke, as in the Zorro guy. That his name is Diego as well. So, and he is Don Diego de la Vega, and I play around saying that I'm Don Diego de Las Vegas, even though I have never been to Las Vegas.
Okay. Well, great. And I'd like to set a bit of an idea down here, if you're okay, before getting into the weeds on any particular topic. Please feel absolutely free to interrupt me whenever I say something that maybe you don't understand or don't agree with or is not quite clear, or really if you have any questions about what I'm saying or asking at all, as I will do the same for you. If you're in agreement with that, let's get on with it.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that, because I think interruptions, they serve a higher purpose. In a conversation such as this one, we're not trying to get a gotcha. We're trying to understand or to find the truth, or to just get a better understanding of the other point of view. So I think it truly helps when we interrupt to get a better idea. Instead of, for example, straw manning someone, you do them justice. I think it's an amazing idea to do.
Okay, well, you dropped the name of a fallacy, so we're going to get along great. What is, in your understanding, the common understanding of free will? Sorry for the confusing question to start. Let me try that again. How do you think most people understand the concept of free will?
I think that because religion plays a large role in people's lives, and mostly the Abrahamic religions, they have this notion of free will as given by God. Most people that are religious, and they are the majority of people anyway, they tend to think that this is literally true, that they are free to do whatever they want, in terms that they can choose, they can think for themselves, and they think they are completely free, that their self is totally authentic. I think that's the basis for free will.
And do you agree with them?
Definitely not. I think that if there is any freedom, it is quite limited. We have some wiggle room. We can make some choices. We can change behaviors. We can decide to do something differently for the first time. We can change a few things, but I'm sure everybody has had the other side as well, as they tried to change something about themselves or their environment, and it was not possible for any given reason. And so freedom as an absolute concept doesn't really exist. We are bound by certain rules, quote unquote, um, biologically speaking, right? We're biological beings, and we will, for example, there's this thing of a hungry judge, that when the judge is hungry, he will give harsher rulings. And so, is it free? Are we free to make decisions and choices?
Okay,
That's where I
well,
land.
let me push back a little bit.
All right.
I'm not sure that we do have wiggle room. One of the things that we were talking about on X as we were going back and forth a little bit was a thought experiment that I had first heard from Sam Harris. And let me run you through it. I'm not sure if you're familiar or not, but perhaps the viewers at home or wherever they are, if there are any at all, aren't familiar with it. So basically it goes like this. Pick a city. Any city you want. You're completely free to choose any city at all. Please don't tell me. Let me know when you've made your choice.
Okay. All right, I made my decision.
Okay, I'm going to throw a bit of a curveball to Sam's example because I don't think it makes a difference to the example, but it might be a little wide-reaching or wider reaching. Forget that city. Think of another city. Same rules. Pick any city you like, not the first city you chose, any other city. Let me know when you're ready.
I'm ready.
And a third time. Last time, same thing. Forget the first two cities, choose another city. Any city you like, you're completely free.
Okay.
All right, now, Lebanon. Are you aware, I would guess you are, that Lebanon is a city?
Yeah.
All right, so when I asked you to think of a city, did Lebanon pop into your mind at all? Was that one of the cities you thought of?
Nope.
So the first time, nope. What about the second time? Did you think of Lebanon?
Also no.
The third time, did you think of Lebanon?
Not at all.
Just to be clear, you are aware that Lebanon is a city.
Yep.
Were you free to choose it?
No, I understand this point, and I really like this. No, I don't think I was free. The person deciding and the person speaking in my mind might not be the same. Like, we think sometimes that we make a decision, and the decision has been made beforehand.
Okay, I do want to get there. I just want to go to the wiggle room, and I think we can use this example.
Yeah.
If all else were the exact same, if we traveled back in time, could you have chosen Lebanon?
Well, knowing what I know now, I could, but I probably wouldn't anyway.
Knowing what you know now. I'm sorry, I probably misspoke. I didn't mean we are now going to travel back in time. I mean set the clock back to whatever it was, 2 minutes ago, 5 minutes ago.
All right.
Were you able to have chosen Lebanon?
Nope, not in the least.
Okay, and whatever city you ended up picking, the first, second, and third, were you able to have picked any other cities? I mean, you might think something like this probably happened. New York. No, I'm not. Everyone picks New York. I'm not going to pick New York. Tokyo.
Exactly.
No. I had sushi a couple weeks ago. Tokyo's too easy. I'm going to pick wherever. Puebla City, Mexico. Yeah. And then the second time, probably your mind went through some process, whatever that was, and landed on the city that you actually chose. But if we spun the clocks back, were you able to have picked a different city other than the three that you picked?
I think that is an impossible question to answer, but my gut tells me that I would probably choose the same thing.
So I guess what I'm thinking here is, you chose, or for lack of a better word, you chose
Yeah.
a city, and you had reasons, whatever they were, for choosing that city. If we were to spin the clocks back, all of those same reasons, all of those same quote unquote choices would be the same. So could you have chosen a different city? And I guess you've already answered the question, but then where is this wiggle room?
I think, yeah, I think that the central problem is that for example, when we're looking at a menu and we're thinking of the food that we're going to pick, if we were to measure that, if we were to do a scan of our brain, the decision of the food would appear before you knew it.
Yep.
So yeah, I understand that there is no wiggle room there, but you can, for example, make a decision now and then change your mind after, like consciously say, I want to, for example, a person that is really bad with timing and they're always late, but the events in his life led him to question that, and I want to change that about myself. I want to start being on time every time. So he changes his behavior for the future, and he chose to do that. So this is the wiggle room I'm talking about, even though this decision might not be free either.
Well, that was kind of why I cocked my head a little bit. Oh my goodness, bad word on YouTube. Was that a choice? You know, I do the same thing, right? I'm make a plan for tomorrow, and then, you know, I wake up tomorrow, I'm like, yeah, I don't want to do that anymore. But aren't we still in the exact same position? Like, is it not my environment, my past, my history, perhaps my biology, we could simplify this by saying nature, nurture, that has caused me to change my decision? Or was that really the wiggle room of free will?
Good question. This is a very interesting question, because I think I think that the wiggle room is a very, very small window that we have to make a few changes, but those changes are probably not of your own making in the end, because everything that you do is a byproduct of the environment that you're in, your history, your biology. So the causes are too many to really choose what exactly is the wiggle room. But I think that because it's a chaotic system, this is the part that is free. We can never know all of the causes at the same time of anything, of any event.
So I think that is a great way to say it. I'm still not sure about the wiggle room, but
Yep.
I think you're spot on. So like our nature, well, we can't really fully investigate or understand that either. I mean, DNA sequencing and understanding the genome as it is, I have a proclivity for disagreeableness. No, I don't. I also have a proclivity to try to be funny, although I fail miserably at it. But what is that in comparison to yours? How do I measure that? How do I know if it's my biology or my nature or my nurture? And as you quite rightly said, our nurture is so complex that I'm not sure if we'll ever be able to fully kind of understand it, even if we had all of the variables. So then, is it an illusion? Do we just think we have free will because it's too confusing to understand the predecessors, the things that got us here?
Yeah, I think you have the right answer there, because as I said, we are in a chaotic system, and it is impossible to figure out all of the causes for any given behavior or even an event. For example, a comet. You will try to study that comet. You will try to understand that movement, but it is determined by the gravity of many bodies at the same time, and you have to account for all of that, you will never find all of the causes for anything. But I do have this thought, because if I have a very naturalistic view of the world, and that there's nothing special or metaphysical about it, then our brain must work the same way that the universe does. And the universe is governed by laws that we are starting to know, and we can determine the things, but it's not 100% deterministic. So that's why I would say that there is this small wiggle room that we have, that I call the chaos part in us.
Oh,
But I think that's it.
perhaps I had been misunderstanding you a little bit. So, let me try to steelman that a little bit to see if I'm understanding now.
Very good.
It seems like you might be saying, and sorry, your wording was probably better than mine's going to be, but I'm going to give it a shot anyway.
All right.
Yes, we have nature and nurture, which determines our actions. Having said that, there are outside actions that we aren't in control of. For example, your boss fires you, and you might be in control of that one. Maybe it's a bad example. You meet a beautiful woman at a restaurant or bar or something like that, and that might kind of change the course or the path that your life was on, so that it's not really a notion of destiny or anything like that, that ourselves, we are made up of so many different reasons and nurtures that will lead us in a direction, but there are outside influences that also affect the we that exists. Is that kind of where you were going, or?
I guess so. Yes, I think you explained it really well.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm going to
where I'm
invite you back. So I want to get into you mentioned naturalism a little bit. Let me take a couple steps back, and then maybe we can get to where I wanted to get with it. Assuming psychology is right, and assuming that it's the same as when I studied it, my professors were telling me, be it they correct or incorrect, that people are 100% nature-nurture. If we were to assume that for a moment, doesn't that preclude free will at all? It doesn't the simple fact that we are only nature and nurture, if it is a fact, preclude free will? I mean, if it didn't, there would have to be some sort of soul or something, the ghost in the machine, that is that free will. Or have I misunderstood?
No, I think that, well, the field of psychology is ripe with many different views and conflicting views. And for example, there's the psychoanalysis, and there's behavioral analysis. I tend to go to behavioral analysis rather than psychoanalysis. And I think that psychoanalysis, for example, it allows us to have a more metaphysical view of the world. And they are kind of the favorite of the field, maybe because Freud was the one who started it all. But it allows people to have this ghost in the machine idea, as well as the unconscious mind, and I think that these concepts they allow this idea of free will that is religious. But you can also have another opposing view in psychology that takes in consideration the understanding that we are biological creatures, and we are social, and we have chemistry in our brains, and if that changes, it changes the context, it changes the person. So I think that there are many kinds of psychology to account for that. The ghost in the machine thing is a pervasive idea that most in the society, they hold this view. They actually think that the self is a person behind the face, like you are behind your face, and you're not your face, you're not your body. You have a body, you have a face. So those ideas, they are pervasive and not at all scientific.
Do you think it has anything to do with Coca-Cola? So that's as close as I can come to a Freud joke with the medication he used to prescribe without getting flagged on YouTube. Coca-Cola, Diego. Did it have anything to
Yeah,
do
I
with?
got
Oh,
it.
sorry, a crap joke maybe. So
Yeah, no, it might be. It might be because they were. He was free-ranging a lot. He was thinking of a lot of crazy concepts, and he never really put them to the test. Um, so a lot of the psychoanalytical concepts, they are like inventions. They're not evidence based.
mm,
So maybe Coca-Cola has something to do with that.
I can't remember who the actual first inventor was, but yeah. Well, let's move off of Coca-Cola for a second. We'll probably get dinged for advertisements here. The other cola, the other one. You mentioned naturalism,
Yep.
and I am not a naturalist. I'm not a materialist. What I would consider myself is a methodological naturalist. So, kind of the idea, the way I see it, perhaps incorrectly, is that naturalism suggests all of everything is, natural causes. There's no spirituality. There's no ghost in the machine. There's nothing like that. Whereas methodological naturalism says, well, look, this is kind of what we've seen, and this is what we're going with until such time as the spirit realm or ghosts or whatever can be shown, evidenced. How do you feel about that distinction? Did I get it right? Where do you find yourself?
I agree with the characterization you made, and I think I understand your distinction. And if I were to be fair, I would take the same position as you, because we can't know for sure if there is a spirit or not. But I base my observations, I base my characterization of this on the claims that I hear, and we have many special claims and from spiritual people, from religious people, and they kind of contradict each other. So they can, I guess I take it this way: they can not all be right at the same time, but they can all be wrong. So spirit and the spiritual realm. Sorry.
Okay, no, sorry, just a bit of a problem there. I'm I'm
All right.
here. Sorry about that.
No problem.
We also wanted to talk about the self, and you
Yep.
did mention that. So, what is the self? Is it a thing? Is it not a thing? I think you mentioned your feeling that it might be an illusion. What did
Yep.
you mean by that? And you also mentioned people have this feeling that it's kind of behind the face or whatnot.
Yeah.
Can you speak to that a little bit, please?
Of course. Um, so I this is my impression on what people think that self is. Self is someone that you identify with, uh, like an essence of who you really are. And so your parents, for example, might have the notion that they truly know who you are, even if you change throughout your life, because they know the self that they brought to this world. And I happen to believe that self is a pure illusion, and illusion with a specific cause. There is one cause for the illusion of self that I would say that. I'm not sure, but I would say that language is the cause for the illusion of self. Because we developed language, and language kind of takes a soul of its own, and you start speaking to yourself. You hear your own voice in your head, so that voice must be someone, must be the self. And since we have this feeling that our self is inside our head, not our head or not our body, I think that we believe that it is an immutable creature from birth to who we are now. But at the same time, we do change throughout our lives. And so, where is that essence? I believe that self doesn't exist in reality because you are just a group of behaviors that you took that other people uh, they behaved a certain way, they taught you something, they gave you a context, and it brought you up that way. So there is no self, and that's why I was also talking about free will. I think self and free will, they are very intertwined, and they are probably both not real.
Okay. Maybe I want you to unpack some of that a little bit more. When you say illusion, I mean, I will assume that you think that you are real. You interact with other people, you're interacting with me now, I see you, I can hear you. That part of the you is not an illusion. You seem to be separate from me. I'm not causing you to say what you're saying, or I don't think I am.
Yeah.
I hope I'm not. So what do you mean exactly illusion in terms of the self?
I guess that the illusion part is believing that you are this one thing, and because of we have a name and we identify with our name and our bodies, and we think that this is who you are, but you are both your history and what's happening right now, and you don't have any control over the future you. So this idea of self is illusory because, for me, it's illusory because you are not just one thing. For example, you will behave differently in different contexts. You speak a certain way with with the elderly. You speak a certain way with children. You change your mode of being. And isn't that the self too? Is that just a mask? That's where I think I land on.
So it seems like you're saying something to the effect of, if there is no free will, there is no self. Is that close, or?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's exactly it. If there is no free will, 100% that you are free, then there is no self, because the self is a person who is choosing things. But if you're not really choosing, then you're not really you. You're just a continuum of who you have been, but it doesn't have to be like a narrative. You're not a character in a book, and you have like your first, second, and third acts, and you're going to fulfill this or that. You don't have to make any sense. Humans try to make sense, but they don't have to, and they don't.
They often don't, that's a fact. So then maybe I could compare it to, I don't know, a caterpillar, and I'm going to piss off all the caterpillar lovers. So a caterpillar is a thing,
Yeah.
cocoon, leaves, butterfly, woohoo, it's a thing. But
Yeah.
it doesn't, or at least we don't think, it has any kind of conscious thoughts. It's hungry, it eats, it's tired, it goes in a cocoon. What do I know about caterpillars? Are you saying then, are you calling me a caterpillar, Diego? Is that what's going on here?
In a certain way, yes. You and everybody else, me included. But we are also the butterflies. We are the caterpillars and the butterflies. We change, we transform. And that's the wiggle room that I think that we have. We are both the caterpillar and the butterfly.
Okay, that's an interesting idea. I think both of those will lead people, some people, hopefully not too many, towards criminal punishment. So one of the common rebukes that I hear about free will is, or even indeed lack of self, is that, well, what do you do with criminals? So it's not their fault. So just to straw man you a little bit, to let you argue back. So Diego, you're saying that we should not lock up criminals, that everyone can go free because it's not their fault. Is that, I don't think that's what you're saying. I hope not. Go for it.
Well, I'm not really saying that. I understand how one could get from point A to this point B.
Hmm.
I understand this, but I think that first we have to assume our society, entire society, assumes the self is a real thing. We take it as real, and we act as if. Even if it isn't, it kind of is. And accountability is a part of it, and we have to create some sort of order. So I believe that it is a good lie, and we should keep people locked in when they are a threat to society. Yes. So even if they don't have free will, they shouldn't be on a killing spree anyways, and we're better off with them locked away.
So I think that's where I come down, kind of on your second shot there, is that it doesn't really matter. I mean, it matters, but whether there is a self or isn't a self, society deems different societies deem different things acceptable or unacceptable, and
Yeah.
whatever society it is that deems whatever action it is unacceptable needs a way to get that person out of the society. So, you could kill him, you could send him out of your society, or you could take that person and some way remove them from your society, at least from the public. Um,
Yeah.
that might
I
move us to morality. And this is not really a question that we kind of agreed we would talk about. So if you don't feel comfortable or whatever, that's fine. But the different societies do punish and remove people for vastly different crimes, acts, let's say. And some are perfectly acceptable in some places and not at all even close to acceptable in other places. So, morality is subjective? Or where do you stand there?
You mentioned Sam Harris earlier, and I'm also I read some Harris too. I like his content and the way he thinks about many things. And one of his books that I read was really interesting. Is The Moral Landscape, which is a rendering of morality, not as an entirely subjective thing. There is the right and wrong. That's why I am more of a naturalistic kind of person. I think that there are right or wrong answers independently of culture. If we take Sam Harris's idea of the best possible outcome is what we want to say that is good morality, and the worst is bad morality. But there is not just one answer. It's like many mountains, many. The landscape is pretty varied, and we can have many right answers and many wrong answers. So I don't think it's entirely subjective. I think there is some room for subjectivity, but since I believe the self is not a real thing, anyways, so I don't think that morality is either that much of a free concept. It's not that free, and we are not at all that subjective. I hope I
Okay.
have explained it well. I don't know.
Yeah, not too bad. I think I follow it. Sam talks about, as you mentioned, kind of the peaks and valleys of those
Yes.
mountains.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we can maybe agree, and I don't mean just you and I people at large. Look at that, I got three hands. Maybe we can agree on some of those peaks, or maybe we can agree on some of those valleys. But a common counterpoint that I've heard to Sam is, what about the other ones? So I don't even know what an example is. Speeding. I don't know. Maybe that's a bad example. We might be able to agree that murder is, one of those bad things and one of those valleys, and that disciplining children in a recommended way such that they thrive is maybe one of those peaks. What about the stuff in the middle? What happens to the ones that are a little bit more difficult? An example might be religious people. Different religions around the world practice different sorts of behaviors. The Jains, for example, may walk very slowly such that they don't step on bugs. To them, it might be a very bad, immoral thing to kill a bug, whereas I go out of my way to kill cockroaches and mosquitoes on the daily. So we've got a bit of a problem. How is that one solved?
I don't think it will ever be solved because, first of all, religion tends to want to be above the human law. It will never accept being below human law. And that is a problem in itself, because one religion deems certain things as right or wrong, another religion will disagree entirely. And I don't think this problem will ever be fixed, because religion comes from, well, my take on it is that religion comes from fear of death, and that will never go away because we'll never be able to see beyond to change that. So religion will always, well, this is more of a very aggressive take, but religion will always prey on our fears of the unknown and try to create the sense of a world that makes sense.
Okay.
That's it.
Let me touch on that quickly. I hear a lot of religious people, in particular Christians, but Muslims as well, mention, and not all of them, but quite a few of them, mention that in their opinion, morality is objective because it comes from God. Just maybe a strange question. Is that objective or is that subjective?
I think I know what you mean by that. I think that they think it's objective, but they are objectively false. Because, first of all, if we take only the Bible as an example, the God of the Bible changed his mind in terms of morality more times than one. The God of the Old Testament is definitely not the same God as the New Testament, and the morality changed. So how can it be objective?
That was exactly the point that I was going to raise. You nailed it on the head there. That's where I was looking at. Well, if you don't mind, let's take a short break, and we can come back and talk about atheism or critical thinking or perhaps education, but maybe just 4 minutes here or something. Is that okay with you?
Okay, that's perfectly fine.
All right. I'll see you in about 4 minutes then.
Okie dokie.
All right. Come on in. Okay, so look. I was supposed to give my usual shining example of education and competence. But, well, I had some problems on the way here, and, well, I lost all my notes. So, well, I was thinking maybe we could just have a chat. I don't know what to talk about, really. Ooh, let's talk about the Force. Now, I know when I say the Force, even the Timmies in the room will know what I'm referring to, but I go a step further. I know it's real. Real. Like, really real. Yes, I hear the doubts. Okay, let's talk proof then. The movies, books, TV shows, music, literally everything was made in the past. Yes, things are being made now, but we won't get to see them until after they are made. So when we see them, they too will be in the past. This means that all of canon, literally everything, is historical. Now, I don't know about you, but I think learning about history is too important to just laugh off. I talk to lots of civilians all the time. They tell me outrageous stories about lots of different things. I have no idea how these stories could have happened. There's just so much evidence of this force all around us. How can you not see it? All notions of morality, peace, and justice come from the Force. This is clearly explained in canon. our history. To believe that there is no really real force means turning away from these ideas, to turn to the dark side. The sheer number, the huge, overwhelming number of Star Wars fans around the world, every corner, they absolutely love the stories, which demonstrates that there must be something here. We must have some kernel of truth. Look, in the end, I guess I just don't know what I would do if there were no Force. What a terrible existence. The Force is what guides me, what teaches me, what protects me. Sorry, I got a little personal there. Hippie, wipe those tears away and get to work. All right, Sarge, maybe we'll rename you Fallacious Crumb. Yeah? Yeah? Yeah, look, I don't care. I'm ready. If the stinky hippie can't keep a schedule, why should everyone else suffer? Look, I have to wait all day. Every day already. I went to the bank today. I waited in line for 30 minutes to hand over my hard-earned money to someone who will do nothing aside from take it. If I have to keep my money in a bank, why don't we take out the middleman? Why doesn't the bank just send someone to do my job? Look, while driving to this stupid bank, I was waiting in traffic. I waited for the light to turn green, only to... I waited for the light to turn green, only to move to the next light. Wait, go. It's like last week when I ate too much Chipotle. Tonight I'm planning on taking the missus out to dinner. We will wait in the entrance for a bit, then we will be seated where we will wait. We will order our food, and then wait. And this whole time, who is the one helping us? The waiter! If a teacher teaches, then I ask you, why do I have to wait for one who waits? Anyway, you tell that undersized little... hi, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you were there. So sorry. Yes? Timmy, stop being a whiny little turd. How long have you been waiting? Show a little patience, please. Really? When will you grow up? Ah, finally. Apparently the hippie is ready. Do something. Just stop making me wait. See what I can do, Sergeant. Did you, miss the line there, Tiger, or what happened?
All right, we're back. Let me see if I can move you. It seems like I've got you all over the place. Where are you? Right where? Oh my goodness, I can't find you at all. Right there.
All right.
There you go. Handsome as always. So, education, or we're kind of touching religion here a little bit. You, sir, have mentioned you are an atheist. What does that mean to you?
That means to me that there are many claims for a spiritual world, for a metaphysical reality, and very little evidence, or zero evidence, to back it up. And unless we take testimony as evidence, which I don't usually take. So I think that an atheist is merely a person who refuses to believe something without evidence. But it's a bad name. I understand this because I don't believe in fairies, but there is no name for fairies, a fairyist. But we use the name atheist. I think that the difference is that the world is not ruled by people who believe in fairies, but ruled by people who believe in gods, and they tend to want to control your life. So I think calling ourselves atheists has this component of defending ourselves against the majority that wants to control us.
So then, should we not identify with a label, or should we choose a different label, or what are your thoughts on that?
I think that if we could invent a new name for that would be best, but we shouldn't worry too much about it and maybe just take the word for ourselves and define it the way we want it and not let them define who we are. So we can continue to use the word atheist, even though it doesn't perfectly describe what or who we are. Um, I believe that atheism is just a way to say we don't believe without evidence.
Okay.
That's it.
So, sorry, a little self-promoting here. What do you think about the label Afidemist? So, if you didn't know, fidem is Latin for faith, and hopefully someone can correct me because I don't. My Latin is terrible. A meaning without, and is the person. Afidemist. That's where I got my name, or where I created
Yeah.
my name. Would that be a reasonable substitute, or it doesn't really encompass what you want it to for the way you feel or identify or think or whatever the correct word is there?
I love the question. I think that it's a great word. Affidemist is a great word. I'm not versed in Latin, but I do know a word or two because I am Brazilian and Portuguese is a Latin language, so we kind of know a few words. And I like the idea that you shift the focus from God to faith. Um, and I agree with you. I lack faith, and that's why I don't believe in any God. So it is much more on point. But I think that using the word atheist triggers people, and that has a value of its own because it generates a conversation. So I am happy that you use this word, and I think we should use more of that word. Aphidemist seems a pretty apt description of what we believe or not. But using atheist is like a war title that we should use as well.
So I kind of like a bunch of that. When I agree with you. When I tell people I'm an atheist, they generally get a little combative, but not always. And I guess the question I really wanted to ask is, when you say that to people, in your experience, do they understand what you mean, or do they misunderstand what you mean? Because generally speaking, in my experience, people ask you, oh, what religion are you? I'm like, oh, I'm actually an atheist. So you don't believe in anything? You're a Satanist. Blah, blah, blah. They just fly off the handle. You're like, no, I didn't say any of that. That's not me, and that's not even what the word means. But yeah. Do you have this experience, or is this maybe one of the reasons why you're mentioning the label is kind of good and bad?
I think I understand what you mean. My experience is very similar. When I use the word atheist, it's generally misinterpreted and usually not that good for a conversation, but it only depends on the kind of people you're trying to talk to, because some people they don't want to talk to you, they just want to proselytize. So those will always misinterpret you no matter the work you might try to do. And the misinterpreting aspect, it will always be there. I think the central problem is that the religious straw man of atheism is as big as a megazord. So most people know the straw man, not the actual position. So when you use the word, they will understand atheists as understood in the Bible. And that is a bad description of the word.
Okay. Is it necessary for all atheists to agree? Because a lot of us don't. I mean, on the definition of the word. I know there was a conversation not too long ago that was pretty large in the quote-unquote atheist community about whether a rock is an atheist or not. And That seemed to go around. Honestly, I get pretty bored of the conversations. I'm a member
Yeah.
of several groups and I rarely comment.
Yeah, I think I've never put this question forward to ask if a rock is an atheist as well. I think this is kind of silly to take in these terms because a rock is not a person. It doesn't think for itself. It is also not religious. So, what is the point of talking about a rock? But I do think we don't have to agree. Atheists in general don't have to agree because I think atheism is exactly talking about diversity of thought. And if we were to flock under one specific way of describing the world, the experience, or even the word atheism, then we are being dogmatic as well, and that is wrong.
Do you think that humanitarianism, humanism, do I have the word right?
Humanism. Yeah,
Am I messing
humanism.
this up? Um, it seems like there are a lot of atheists who self-identify as humanists in terms of their morality, I guess. Do you see that as a potential problem in terms of the dogma that you're speaking of? Or does it make sense? Is it kind of a natural progression? Or is it a bad idea?
I I don't know if it's a bad idea, but I tend to see it as you're putting yourself in a box.
Ooh.
Well, when you're saying atheist, you're already kind of doing that as well. But since atheism is not perfectly defined word, I use it in a certain way. You use it in a different way. So we kind of don't agree 100%. But humanism is a movement, and it tends to have like a philosophical presuppositions, and then you are subscribing to a way of thinking, and that is not exactly an atheist.
Would it be fair to call it an ideology?
Yes, I would say it's an ideology. Yes.
So then, maybe if I could make an analogy, I do not identify with either political party in America, for example, but just as an example, if I were to say I'm a Democrat, does that mean I must follow all of the laws of the left? Sorry, laws is the wrong word there. All of the thoughts, the opinions, the ideas, the morals, the thoughts about how to govern. Similarly, if I were to call myself a conservative, does that mean that I must, or that I do, follow the concepts and ideas of the right? And I guess by the same token, if I call myself a humanist, am I stuck in that box? Or is it maybe the wrong move anyway? If you want to know how I feel about second-degree murder or I don't know, whatever, the abortions or so on, maybe we should talk about the topic as opposed to the ideology. Or
Yeah.
how do you feel about this, ideologies in general?
I think first, ideology is a way to organize your views on the world, and they are relevant. And one might hold many ideologies and sometimes conflicting ideologies, and never notice, because humans are not supposed to make sense. As I said before, we try to make sense. We want to make sense. At the end of our lives, we want to have accomplished a bunch of things. We want to be like, my life was worth it. I make sense. But we don't have to make sense. And so we have many times the conflicting ideas, and a Democrat, a person who votes for the Democrats, might disagree with a lot of things on the Democratic Party, and I hope they do, because if they don't, they are just they're just a flock. They're just believing the same thing and being one group instead of a person. It's groupthink. But I think that ideology is important to organize the views of the world and to make some predictions. You will not be able to make perfect predictions, but if you say you are a Democrat, for example, I kind of probably will be right about some topics, I will imagine that you will go one way or another, and I will be right, because being a Democrat means that you organize your views a certain way. But hopefully not. I hopefully I would not be able to understand the person without even talking to them, just because they gave a title.
I can't remember who it was off the top of my head. Quotes always escape me. It takes me so long to find who said what when I'm making videos, but something to the effect of, and it might have been Christopher Hitchens, I'm not really sure who it was. If I know many of your points, or maybe all of your points, simply based on your answer to one question, you're kind of boring. So using that idea, do you think there's actually anyone, and if so, who, that 100% mirrors their ideology?
No, a hard no. I think they might believe so, but they don't.
Okay.
We can't know everything that we think about at one point. I think that, well, psychoanalysis touched upon that, and before psychoanalysis, Nietzsche talked about that. Like our consciousness is like a lighthouse, and it illuminates a portion of the sea, specific portion of the sea, but all of the sea is there at the same time. You're just illuminating a portion of it. You can't know your whole being. This is impossible. So you can't be sure that you 100% agree with any given view.
Okay, so if no one, assuming that's correct, no one adheres 100% to any ideology they claim to adhere to, then what's the point? Like, is it just a shorthand, just looking at the cover of a book? But if the cover does not represent the book, then why are we doing it at all? Wouldn't it maybe be more useful to talk about the actual issues? Or is it just a shorthand? You know, you're from Brazil, so therefore you must love capoeira. You know, and we've already talked about this. You don't,
Yeah.
so don't.
Yeah, I understand. I think it's a shorthand, yes, and in some contexts, it's much more interesting to focus on the ideas themselves. But since ideologies do organize people, and people seem to have this basic need to belong to a group, and then we develop many groups, and groups inside groups. So this is a way that we organize our thoughts, and also a way to change groups and to move between groups. So it's interesting to have some definition of certain groups, as I said, to be able to understand the other groups. That's what I imagine.
Okay, so
I don't know if my point went across.
No, I think I got you.
Yeah.
And to a large part, I agree. Humans have always been tribal. That does not necessarily mean they always will be. One of the things I see is that any kind of tribalism at all always creates the other, right? There's our group, and we're better because, well, we're in it. And then there's your group, which isn't nearly as good as our group because you're not in our group. When that kind of setup is made, traditionally, that has caused problems. I could give you some examples, but I don't think you need any. So I guess two questions. One, if tribalism is negative in some ways, shouldn't we maybe try to cease it? And is it necessary? In your opinion, will humans always be tribal? Will we always have these in and out groups?
I think it's impossible to separate the groupings. We will always tend, in my opinion, to form groups. And yes, it's pretty straightforward. You create groups, you will create conflict.
Yeah.
But conflict, we generally look at conflict under a negative light, but it is not necessarily a negative thing. It might feel as a negative experience, but the conflict might be on our best interest to change society. So, for example, the left and the right, they will not see eye to eye, but the existence of one and another is exactly what allows society to be rich in diverse in thought and in institutions and in problems and in solutions as well. So I think that group is a part that is impossible to separate from us, and they are not necessarily bad, even though it generates conflict. Conflict might be good. We must learn a way to do conflict, but conflict is necessary.
Okay, so I hear you and I completely agree. Like, if we're going to have a debate, we need two different sides, and that in and of itself is conflict. Your example of politics in the States, regardless of a lot of the problems they have, is another good example. I think we can both think of examples that are not so good.
Yeah.
Wars in different parts of the country that exist right now might be an example. But there is another point here. We, at least in quote-unquote the West, have been working pretty hard over the past 50, 60 years to try to give women equal rights. And certainly one can make arguments about whether they are or aren't there or whatever you want to do about that. But isn't this an example of an attempt, to try to crush those groups? Racism would be another example. Jim Crow laws, the ending of slavery, so on and such forth. And again, I'm not saying we're there. I'm saying people are overtly trying to end these groups, or to create larger groups with both of them in it. I'm not exactly sure how to say that. And despite being successful or unsuccessful, or degrees of success, it seems like people are interested in closing those groups. Maybe not all groups. You're free to believe in whatever religion you want, and I'm free to believe in a different one or none at all. So it doesn't seem like we're trying to close that particular gap, but we are trying to close others. So then, I guess, are you saying this is a doomed enterprise? Are you saying that people should not be equal? Women are not equal, Diego. Come on, what do you say? What do you think about? Obviously, I'm putting words in your mouth just to make you smile. I know you're not saying that, but what is it that we're doing in terms of trying to erase those tribes, erase that separation, if there's no end that can come to it, if we are destined to remain tribal in terms of sex or race or any other number of ways that we're trying to kind of stop those differentiations?
That is a very difficult question to answer. Because
C. I pick C. It's multiple choice, right?
yeah, I think that first of all, equality is right and wrong at the same time, and that is the source of the problem. We are different. People are different. Women and men are different. They are biologically different. The brain is different. The bone density is different. Things are different. But in terms of opportunity, we should strive. I personally think that we should strive, as the West has been doing, to have a more egalitarian society. And if you look back, we are much better than hundreds of years ago. We tend to progress in a historical point of view. I like what Steven Pinker talks about this, the Illuminism, the new Illuminism idea, and that yes, we have access to a lot of bad news, and they're trying to crush our rights here and there. Yes, some people are, but maybe we care too much about what a small group says, and they're not as dangerous as we think they are.
Okay. I'm trying to think of the book. Was it Better Angels of Our Nature? Is that am I way off here? Anyway, sorry, I don't want to put you on the spot. I was just going through my mind. Like, what the hell was that name?
Steven Pinker's book, right?
Yeah, yes.
The one I didn't finish that one.
Oh.
The one I read was The Blank Slate,
Mm.
and I didn't finish. But I've watched some of his videos and discussions and debates, and that's where I got some of his ideas on progress. That he believes that we are even with all the bad things that we have nowadays, even the medium class kind of guy, he lives better than any king lived 300 years ago. So we are better off, and even though there are many gaps to fill to close, we are so much better off. And I don't think I think this is the way to answer your question. I don't think it's a bad idea to continue to fight for our rights, but this is a never-ending conflict.
Let me. So I wanted to move on, but you just hit a buzzword for me: rights. So
Okay.
I don't know how. Yeah, damn it! I don't know your background. I have a deep-seated love affair with George Carlin, and I realize he's gone. I actually cried that day. I literally called in sick to work, sat down, and cried. I'm a big baby. Making me a little emotional now just thinking of it.
I like him too. Yeah.
George Carlin said something to the effect of, "We don't have rights. Who are they granted by?" And that was off just after a kind of anti-religious speech. So he made a bit of a joke about they don't come from God. Then he said, "Well, they must come from the government." But he made the allusion, the reference to the Japanese internment camps. So I guess the idea is, what are rights? Or maybe start with, do they even exist?
Well, literally, they don't exist. They are ideas that we want pushed forward, and we have to enforce them to guarantee their existence, but they don't really exist.
Who is the we there?
The we is the government that is made by the people and for the people, quote unquote. So we are the ones enforcing, but the we part is not really we. I don't know. That was kind of confusing. I said something kind of confusing.
So I guess, governments have the ability to enforce whatever rights they deem right in their own countries. I'm not convinced that they always do. Furthermore, what about other countries? So, if something is a human right, there's still slavery in Africa, for example. There's lots of problems, child labor here in Vietnam, in China. These things still happen. So, is it fair to the slaves in Africa or the children working in Vietnam factories to talk about rights? Well, you have the right to freedom. Dude, I'm a slave. You have the right to an education and freedom of choice and so on and such forth. Dude, I need to make money to buy bread to feed my family. I hope you like your iPhone, sir.
Oh, I get it. Yeah. Well, I understand that it's a horrible situation that we have both the beautiful the beautiful rainbow world that and I mean rainbow just because of many colors, no affiliation.
Sorry, there's a huge pun there. I'm not going to touch it, but there's a pun there.
Yeah. But I think that we can see both the good and the bad at the same time. But just as I said about Steven Pinker, we have way less slaves now than we used to have, and we are moving to a direction that kind of respects human rights, but it is far from flawless, and it is contradictory to talk about human rights, that you have the right of this or that, and some people prove you wrong. So that's kind of absurd. But we can continue to fight for their rights even though they're in different countries. And that, I think that's what the UN exists for, even though it's also a flawed institution. But I think that's why it exists. To start thinking about it, it's a very recent event to start thinking of human rights for the whole planet, right? Because I'm sure you disagree with some of the morality in different countries and the rights that some people have. For example, in the Middle East, women have less rights than we have here on the West. So I disagree with that kind of thing there. But how can we change that?
Well, actually, thank you. That's literally my next question. Education. How is there some form of education that we could introduce that might help push us along the path to granting or ensuring rights for everyone? Can we bring this back to education in some way?
I think so, and I think I can get more or less what you're trying to bring here. I think that the best remedy in education is not really teaching hard sciences, hard skills, soft skills. It's teaching one specific skill, that is critical thinking. If you are able to think for yourself and really assess information and make an informed decision on things, even if it's not the best decision, it's the best possible decision at that given time. So critical thinking is the best tool in the shed, I guess.
So you are preaching to the choir, my friend.
Yeah.
I teach now a couple of different books. I'm actually not going to name them, but in one of them, it's so frustrating for me because this is the soup I swim in. But they'll ask, like every second or third page, there'll be critical thinking, and it'll say something to the effect of, "What's your favorite city and why do you like it?" Yes, this is not critical thinking. This is asking you for your opinion. I'm not interested in your opinion. I'm interested in you thinking about a topic. So let's dive in here a little bit more.
Right.
What is this magical critical thinking you speak of?
That is very hard to define, but I would say that critical thinking is best felt, at least, when you try to take on the position of the other person who you don't agree with. But now you're going to have to defend it. I had to do that once at the university. I was supposed to defend John Locke's idea. He is basically the father of liberalism. And I had to defend him, and at the time, I think I was more of a communist, and I didn't agree with him, but I had to defend him, and I think that's exactly the tool. That's critical thinking, because it will put you in contact with another world entirely, another set of ideas, and you will have to make the connections yourself, and you will have to make it make sense. And when you go back to your original position, you will be that much more intelligent and more informed to make any decision. So I think that critical thinking is changing where you stand on to be able to stand wherever you want.
So I'm trying to think, was it Aristotle or Plato? One of them said the mark of intelligence is being able to hold two positions as true or something, or be able to argue both. I need to look up my quotes. But something to the effect of understand both sides of the argument. So what happens with me in my classes is when I see this critical thinking, who's your favorite, or where's your favorite, which is your favorite city and why, I will change the question to be like, which is your favorite city? Tell me why it's bad. Give me 3 reasons why I would not like it. Something like that. So what about charitable listening? What about fallacies? What about, so maybe a little bit of my history. I'll try to speed through this. I was and am an atheist, and I watched a lot of the atheist experience, the old school, because I'm old school, Matt Dillahunty and way back in the day. And I got quite tired of it, to be honest. What I saw was that a lot of the religious people were making really bad arguments. But then some things in my own personal life happened, and just regular conversations about politics or whatever, and I saw the exact same arguments. And then I kind of realized that this has nothing to do with religion. This is just the way, or kind of the door I'm walking through to this room. And once I get in the room, I'm looking around going, you don't know how to think, but you think you do, so what about me? Like, I probably am making tons of mistakes and fallacies, and I'm just not aware of it, just like the people that I'm listening to, and I'm able to spot them. So I guess in a lot of ways, some of this is selfishness. I want other people to learn fallacies to call me out when I make bad arguments, such that I can improve my life and hopefully stop believing in terrible things. I'm not there yet, but hopefully walking forward step by step every day. Does this strike anything in you? Is there any, getting back to education a little bit, is there something we can do here, like in terms of critical thinking?
I think that I have a similar experience with fallacies as well. I'm fascinated about that because of a similar idea. I don't know if I want other people calling me out, or if I want to be able to notice my thoughts myself and be able to change when I notice that it is fallacious. So, well, and I certainly expect other people to help me achieve that goal, but I generally think in the sense that I want to study fallacies to be able to think better, even if nobody points my thoughts right or wrong.
So hold on a second though, and let me make a huge circle.
Yeah.
If I don't pick the city, if I'm not the one choosing the city, then am I the one choosing to use a fallacious argument or not? So what I'm worried about is, I disagree with you, as an example, I disagree with you, and here's why, and here's why, and here's why. But I didn't necessarily choose those things. What it seems to me like I'm doing in this context is defending my position by any way possible. So the reason I'm thinking that is because I've seen it 100 times. I've heard it. I've had these conversations with people, maybe not online, but in IRL. And people will double down on stuff. It's not a fallacy. I'm like, dude, you literally said, I don't know what else it could be, therefore it must be. And I'm like, dude, that's literally a fallacy. Like, definitionally, you could really look up appeal to ignorance or personal incredulity. That's what it says. And people double down here. So I guess I'm not saying you can't. I'm saying I worry that I can't notice or maybe control the creation of fallacies in myself because I get emotional or because I'm not picking the city, so to speak, and they just come out. I don't want them to. I'm aware of more fallacies than pretty much anyone else I know, yet I still have this concern, most probably due to personal bias. I'm right. I want to show you that I'm right, and I will use anything in my power, which seems like a really bad idea. But what are your thoughts on that?
I understand. I understand your point of view, and I think that the biggest problem is the Dunning-Kruger effect, right? That you believe that you are right when you're not,
Yes.
and we are always afraid of being wrong because most of the time there's a cost, a societal cost of being wrong, and you feel shame and guilt, and you want to run away from that feeling. So that's why people will double down on what they think, even when it's absurd, and they might even have noticed it's absurd, but it's too late now to back out. So they will defend to the best of their abilities, and they will use fallacies. I think it's a kind of impossible to check ourselves perfectly. Um, it is nice, but well, that was the original thought for me. That if I become more aware of fallacies, then I will be able to notice my own fallacies. But obviously, having another person telling you that, showing you the way, is great. But also, as you can see, lots of people, when discussing with you or me or other people, and we're trying to show them fallacy, they will not see it. But that's just Dunning-Kruger effect.
So I wonder if when we talk about or think about teaching critical thinking I go ahead and say elementary school, because I don't see any reason to wait until high school, and maybe grade 3, 4, 5, something like that, maybe starting. If we were to teach fallacies then, I keep using the math analogy because I think it fits so well. Everyone knows 2 + 2 is 4. So I make math mistakes every once in a while. It happens. And people correct me because it's not difficult. And I'm like, oh, yeah, that was stupid. Like, I'm sorry. That was my mistake. I couldn't add 2 + 14 for some strange reason. But you're right. Thank you for correcting me. Here's the right money, or give me the right money, or whatever the case may be. I wonder if, let's say 70% of children understood, let's say, 20 different fallacies prior to getting out of elementary school. Now, those percentages might be high given reading and writing and arithmetic in the States right now, but I wonder then if people might switch their thinking. Instead of, oh, what were you talking about? I'm wrong, blah, blah, blah. Like, everyone has just heard a fallacy, and a lot of those people understand it. Therefore, oh, yeah, I made a math mistake. The other thing I want to add into this conversation is, you're absolutely right. People are upset, feel bad, feel hurt, emotionally so, when they are shown wrong. Perhaps that also should be added into this idea of critical thinking. What are your thoughts on those two questions, if you can sort them out, I guess?
Well, that's very hard to sort them out, but let me try. So, I guess that when we think of children and teaching children, that's one of the things that I wanted to say. Their brain is not fully developed, and they might not be able to understand or make use of critical thinking as adults do. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't start showing that to them early on. I don't think I will be able to sort the questions out. Can you separate them again, please?
Yeah, I guess the first one was if we were to try to ensure that a large percentage of elementary school kids knew 20 fallacies prior to going into high school, then
and the feeling part.
We should expect, after a couple generations, that a large percent of the population would stop making or would reduce the amount of times they make those or one of those 20 fallacies. It's that simple. Do you agree with that? Is that what would happen?
Yeah. I think it might help. I don't think it's a simple math problem like in 3 generations everybody's gonna be like. No, I don't think that's gonna happen. But I think that yes, it will definitely help because critical thinking, the way I described it, is just being on the other person's shoes, and then coming back to your own position, having a better view of the whole world. So I think it's only beneficial.
Yeah, and, I mean, spot on. Like, I'm not suggesting that no one ever creates mistakes in math, right? Of course, I do. And I'm not, certainly by analogy, not suggesting that, those fallacies will never be made again. Just that if we teach math, fewer people will make fewer math errors.
Definitely. I agree 100% with that, yeah.
The other question was about mistakes. Maybe we should try to look at valuing mistakes, because there are really only two times, in my way of thinking at least, where we learn. One, from ignorance. We didn't know, and then we acquired that information. Two, by making a mistake and someone correcting us.
Yeah.
I think it was Bill Burr. Someone asked him in an interview, "Where do you get all your information? You seem very well caught up." And his answer was, "People correct me on Twitter." I thought it was funny, but a great point. Like, I have trouble with Vietnamese students' names. Vietnamese names are pretty tough. And what I do is I'll ask my students, whose name did I do the worst job at today? "Oh, teacher, you destroyed my name." "Cool. Tell me your name," and I will repeat it back to them. And invariably next week, it's not the same kid. So what I'm doing is trying to model for them that teacher made a mistake. They said the wrong name or said the name incorrectly. And via that mistake, the teacher is now able to say the name better until it comes around again where all the other names are better and that name is now the worst again. Do you think there might be some sort of value in teaching mistakes as useful, as beneficial? Is it even possible?
Yeah, I think not only that, I think they're central. I think they're the most basic thing in teaching, because it's the mistake that will teach you. You said that two things will teach you, and one is getting better information, and the other is being corrected, right? And I think I agree. And when, for example, I'm a musician as well, and I've learned to play the guitar. I was self-taught, but the way I was self-taught was exactly making a ton of mistakes. But I didn't stop there. I said, okay, I made a mistake, but I'll repeat, and I'll repeat, and I'll repeat, and then I got better. And the mistake informs you of the right way, and this is literally something that happens in your brain as well. The image that I can conjure to talk about mistakes is like a path that is not, nobody walks that path anymore, so the grass started growing, everything is a mess, and then you start walking down that path again, 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, and then it starts to be clearly like a path. It looks like a path again, a proper path. And that's what we should be doing in education. It's repetition, and it's looking at mistakes and correcting and overcorrecting, and that is the only way forward.
So
I don't know if I answered it.
So then, what is it that we are doing in education which may be or maybe is wrong? And, you know, understanding that you are in Brazil, I'm in Vietnam, we have drastically different education systems in these countries, as well as every other country. So
yeah,
obviously it's not, you know, a blanket, or perhaps it is a blanket problem. Perhaps many countries are doing the same thing wrong. What, in your mind, is that thing?
I think that mostly the problem with education is trying to educate when we should teach independent thought. And so education focuses a lot on giving the right answers for things and memorizing information, and sometimes useless information, and most of the time useless information. So the central problem of education is focusing on those skills rather than teaching the person to think for themselves. And I like to think that I act in a different way. I try to act in a different way as a teacher, because I have no, I don't want to teach anyone. I am an English teacher, but I don't teach English to any student. I merely give them the opportunity to teach themselves. That's how I learned English. Sorry?
A facilitator.
Yeah, a facilitator. And that's how I learned myself English, right? I've learned with video games and music and series and movies, and then talking and making mistakes while talking, and writing by myself and correcting my own pronunciation. That's how I arrived at the current English that I have, not through normal means, studying in a school, a book. And I think this is a much more real learning. And that's the mistake part. I made a mistake and I continued and I tried and I fixed. And that's how we do it. And the education focuses on memorizing. I'll memorize grammar, memorize this, memorize that, instead of thinking of the logic. For example, of the grammar tenses, the verb tenses, there is a logic behind. You don't have to memorize that present perfect is this or that. You just have to understand the logic behind it.
Okay. On behalf of English teachers everywhere, and anyone that does watch this video, I think your English is pretty damn good, man. Yeah, well done. I taught myself Mandarin by speaking to girls in bars, but I think your English is better than my Mandarin, so lihai.
But that's an amazing opportunity to, well, that's one of the best reinforces for learning when you have an ulterior motive like that. I want to pick up this girl, so I have to speak. So I think that's a great idea.
You're only saying that because I have a mask on. Yeah, I was talking to the girls without a mask, and yeah, it was a nightmare, bud. A nightmare. Trigonometry, I'm not sure if you're familiar with them or not. A couple of ex-comedians, or current comedians maybe, do a bit of a podcast now. Have a channel that's really blown up. And they end their shows with or their podcasts, their interviews, their long-form interviews, with a question that I quite like. And I'll pose it to you now, if you don't mind. What are we not talking about, and maybe not just you and I, people in general, what are we not talking about that we should be?
Feelings.
Feelings?
Yes.
That's an interesting answer. What do you mean?
Because we should understand feelings and not bottle them up or to accept feelings as reality. A lot of people will warp reality through their feelings without noticing their feelings. This is a concept in cognitive psychology or also behavioral analysis, that it's like a lens, and you don't separate the lens from you, so you are your feeling. But that's not true, because right now you are calm and you think a certain way. When you're angry, you think a different way. And I think we should understand feelings. That's what I mean. So talking about them is really important, to understand that they are not our experience. They're just a lens.
Okay, so I started off kind of disagreeing. I made comments about feelings in several other videos, but you brought me back. So it seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that something like we should understand when, maybe recognize might be a word here. We should recognize when we are having these feelings, such that we don't necessarily act on them if we rationally can think of a better choice. And we might be able to do that by understanding and talking about our feelings. Is that close?
Yeah, it's close. It's I think I'm basing my answer on the concept of nonviolent communication by Marshall. That you have to describe your feelings, but you will also have to try to describe the facts and separate facts from feeling. You are not going to erase your feeling, like you're feeling frustrated for this or that, but instead of attacking the other person because you're feeling whatever you're feeling, you will describe that you're feeling this, but what happened was X or Y or Z, and clearly communicate what you want from all of this. So you will have three dimensions. You will have the dimension of the feeling, the dimension of the world of facts, and what you want from all of it. And understanding feelings as feelings and not as reality, or the opposite, which a lot of people also do, like they bottle their feelings up. So putting the feelings right on the spotlight and try to understand them as such is the best way. that was my idea.
Okay. Well, I don't hate on that. I really like the idea of separating.
Yeah.
And I find a lot of people don't. And so maybe through education and conversation, we can get to a stage where we are more prone to separate these two things and hopefully thereby be able to have productive conversations.
Yeah, and as I mentioned earlier, I talked about the phenomena of a hungry judge.
Hmm.
This is a real thing. If you take statistics, if you take a look at the statistics, the rulings are harsh when they're hungry,
Yeah.
and that's because a lot of people are hangry, right? I am one of those people. When I'm hungry, I get a little irritable, and it's hard to control. But now that I know this, then either I don't talk to anyone when I'm hungry, or I already know that I'm angry because I'm hungry, and I will try not uh, to be reactive. So if you understand how you feel and what feelings are, you start looking at the world uh, with your feelings without denying them, but you don't let the feelings shape your reality.
Okay, I am familiar with the Hungry Judge.
Yeah.
Do you happen to know the name of that study? If people can look it up, you could probably just Google search Hungry Judge. And basically, correct me if I'm wrong, they took
Yeah.
a look at sentences before and after lunch and saw the same crime be punished much more severely. I think it was after 3 hours or 4 hours if the judge hadn't eaten.
Yeah.
And kind of going way back to the beginning of the conversation, do you think the judge would be aware of that?
I I don't think the judge is usually aware of that. Um, we tend to think that we have a self
Mm,
and we have free will. That's why you said that we are going back to the beginning.
yes.
And he is working. The judge, he or she or whatever, they're working from the assumption that whatever they're deciding for themselves.
Yeah.
So they're blind and blinded by these notions and by their feelings. I think that's it. Their feelings.
Yeah. Well, I have no control over it because I'm not me and I don't have free will. Diego,
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining me tonight. It was absolutely my pleasure. Please comment, subscribe, ask some questions for Diego. Find him on X. Stay away from me. I eat chicken. Take care, man.